To our viewers and listeners, welcome. This debate is presented by City Club of Corvallis and the Corvallis Advocate. The City Club of Corvallis is a volunteer-run, nonprofit organization that seeks to present a diversity of viewpoints and constructive dialogue. The Advocate offers fresh daily hyperlocal news for Corvallis, town halls and debates, and an extensive weekly events calendar. I'm Steve Schultz, of the Corvallis Advocate, and co-moderating with me is Helen Higgins, an active community volunteer and previous City Club board member. This evening, we host a debate for City Council Ward 2. Brie Lewis, incumbent. Challenger is Dylan DeHonor. Helen?
All right, welcome. So let's get started with the coin toss. Dylan, this will be your first question. If you could please introduce yourself and tell us what are your primary reasons for running for council, and you have 1 minute.
Hello, my name is Dylan DeHonor. I'm a working class first generation Filipino American, a renter, and a cyclist. I moved here from Southern California almost 4 years ago for better living and work opportunities. Corvallis is the first city I've lived in where I felt as though I was part of the community, and I've decided to spend much of the rest of my life here. I co-founded the Corvallis Really Free Market. I've helped process clean produce into hot meals for our neighbors. I'm experiencing homelessness in conjunction with Stop the Sweeps Corvallis. I'm a newcomer to the local chapter of the Sunrise Movement, and I'm a nominal member of the local tenants union, Tenants United Corvallis, though I haven't been able to make it to a meeting in quite some time. I'm running alongside 5 others as part of Corvallis' grassroots slate. Our shared priorities are safe and affordable housing, housing justice, multimodal transportation, and climate crisis and community resilience and transparency and public input. I'm running because as much as I love the city, it does have its problems. Our neighbors experiencing homelessness are forcibly displaced by the inhumane practice of sweeps. Everything they didn't have on their person thrown into dumpsters. Hundreds have died from lack of food, water, shelter, and medicine in Oregon, and I don't want Corvallis to be part of that statistic. Many have moved or are planning on moving from Corvallis due to the lack of jobs and affordable housing. Homelessness continues to be an issue, and our natural resources subject to degradation and exploitation.
All right, thank you, Dylan. Brie, please introduce yourself and tell us why you are running for re-election for City Council.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Brea Lewis. I am the current Ward 2 City Councilor. I moved to Corvallis October of 2019 from the Maryland, D.C. area. I grew up around politics. I lost my mother to cancer in 2008, and she was an immigrant from West Africa. I am running for re-election because I want to continue the good work that we've currently been doing. I want to promote more climate action. I want to have more affordable housing. I want to increase the economic development, especially for Ward 2 in the downtown area. And I am an avid user of our public transportation, and I want to see that expanded and do more for our community.
All right, thank you. All right, we're going to move into our first question. Brie, we'll start with you, and you'll have 1.5 minutes. Housing is on the forefront of the minds and concerns of many residents. What ideas would you bring forward to address housing inventory?
So as part of the Hope Advisory Board, I am the city liaison to that, and there have been many ideas in trying to tackle housing. As a renter myself, I am actually currently in my apartment. As a renter myself, I am fully aware that prices are on the rise, and I want to be able to not only work at the local level, but even the state and federal, and if I could, the federal level, to be able to contact people and work hard to be able to get housing prices at least to cap, if not lower. Those are my, yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, Dylan, your question. And you are muted.
My apologies. Ease the permitting process to allow developers to work without excessive back and forth with the city, explore ways to make permitting the construction of accessory dwelling units easier, residential infilling, make adjustments to lot sizes and what can and can't be built within those lots, ensure future annexations are zoned in a way to prevent low-density suburban sprawl, applying pressure on OSU to build more housing to accommodate their students, working with local NGOs to expand their shelter capacity and their efforts developing housing by ensuring they have a predictable stream of grant money, granted on the condition that they regularly report back. Because as much as I commend NGOs for doing their good work, I don't believe they should be the primary way we solve the shortage. And perhaps a radical or utopian idea may be which may or may not be within the council's power, but Corvallis Housing Authority, owned and operated by the city, that develops its own housing and manages directly, is something that's been bouncing around in my head. Even more radical is rethinking what the role of the city government has in meeting the needs of its people, because I believe housing is a human right. And if the market fails in delivering this, then, and when incentives to encourage private interest fail, I think the government ought to step in.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on to our next question. All right, what are your views on how we are addressing homelessness in Corvallis? Specifically, what do you believe would be best practices for our community going forward? You have a minute 30, and Dylan, we'll start with you.
A political as much as it is a moral failing. While I don't put the full blame on the current city leadership, as it is also a failing of our federal and state governments for gutting social programs over the past few decades, I think our city's handling of the situation has been disappointing, to say the least. While there are a lot of variables that contribute to homelessness, chief among them is the availability of affordable housing, which we established we don't have much of and have talked about in the previous question. I'd like to talk about the sweeps. The sweeps are a disservice to everyone involved. The homeless are once again dispossessed and displaced. Where in one park there were encampments after a sweep, they appear in other parks. Where one neighborhood calls in a sweep, now the homeless spread out into other neighborhoods. From parks and recs and ODOT lands, now to private, back to public, and so on and so forth in perpetuity. It is plain and clear the sweeps are a waste of time, money, and effort that does nothing to address the issue and everything to keep up the appearance of action. Sorry, I've spent too much time on the problem, onto solutions, on managed campsites, designated parking for those living out of vehicles, ensuring our local nonprofits tackling the issues receive steady support, prefabricated micro shelters that merely need a place to be set up, alongside access to waste facilities, bathrooms, and showers. It is interconnected with all these other issues. That's all I have to say on the matter.
Okay, thank you. Brie, your question.
So I do agree that how we're handling the housing situation is not great. However, a lot of this is in due partnership with ODOT and the county, and being able to work together with ODOT and the county to find more sustainable solutions and more permanent solutions. That's definitely one of my goals as staying on the city council. I'm sorry. I personally, I honest to God, I really do think that, there are better solutions and better ways to do this. However, that will always depend on what the federal and state does. I just came from a conference recently, and they talked, and a lot of the court cases that are coming down will, whether you think negatively or positively, will impact how we can go with the local level. But our current solutions right now, I think, are the better solutions that we do currently have.
Great, thank you. All right, I'm going to do a quick kind of 30-second follow-up. So Dylan, you spoke to this a little bit, but if you both could share briefly your views of the sweeps. And Bria, I guess it's your turn. We'll start with you. 30-second response on that, and then we'll go to Dylan.
The sweeps are an unfortunate outcome of having a lot of housing issues and a lot of homeless on our streets. I do not think the sweeps are efficient. I don't think the sweeps are helpful. However, it's a very complicated issue when you have a lot of neighborhoods, when you want managed camps, and you want to put them have a place to stay. But unfortunately, it's a lose-lose battle, to be honest, when you have a lot of communities that do not want that in their backyard. So it's a balancing act.
Great. Dylan, your question, 30 seconds.
Not based in evidence, and they lack compassion, and the only one who benefits from this really is the companies whose equipment is borrowed for the sweep. It's just avoiding liability and responsibility, as I see it. It's sort of like a sadistic game of hot potato, where people don't want it right here in my park or my neighborhood. Let it be someone else's. And I heard recently that there was a fire at the tree farm over by 53rd Street, I believe, or 35th. Sorry, 35th, which is inevitable, given that when the sweep is called, there's nowhere to go.
Great. All right. Thank you. All right, we're going to shift gears a little bit, and our next topic will be on local business. And the question is, some downtown business owners are updating their buildings, and we've got a new hotel, retail, and apartments that are on the horizon. If you were presented with the opportunity to support an urban renewal district, would you or not? And if so, why? And we'll start with Dylan. You have 1 minute.
I did hear talks about this at last night's city council meeting. I agree that downtown stands to benefit from investment and development. However, I'm a bit skeptical. There is a real and valid fear of gentrification and veering off from our commitment to sustainability from people I've spoken to about changes set to come downtown, like the parking lot and hotel. Some questions I'd like answered before I consider this issue further, as it is new to me. Like, who would pay into it? Some or all businesses, building owners, landlords, property managers, tenants. How would the funds be collected? Would it be equally or equitably? Would there be exceptions, and why? And who has a say and or decides how this money is used? Is it the Downtown Corvallis Association, the Chamber of Commerce, the council, the city manager? Who would the public be free to add to discourse? Like, I'm not against the idea. I just like for more of a vision as well as some specifics settled before I'm fully on board.
Great, thank you. Rie, your question.
So yes, so this actually was discussed last night at our council meeting. As I had said then, I am tentatively excited for this. A feasibility study would definitely we would definitely have to start there just to see if it will even be able to work. There's a lot of complications of how that would work, where that district would be. Would it be downtown? Would it be somewhere else? So it not necessarily doesn't have to be in downtown. It may make more sense if it was. All of that would have to come from our EDO office and our city manager.
Great, thank you. All right, next question. A financially sustainable community includes a robust business community. So what can we do to attract more business or industry to Corvallis? We'll start with Brie, and you have 1 minute.
So as you had previously mentioned, we do have a new hotel and more boutique boutique stores on the horizon that will definitely bring more vitality to downtown because it will create more jobs. I do believe finding unique ways to entice people to actually move into Corvallis. Unfortunately, we have a lot of people who work in Corvallis, however, they live in cities like Salem and Albany, and they have to commute. Being able to entice them with affordable housing, as well as unique job opportunities, I think will definitely help our community grow in that direction.
Great, thank you. Okay, Dylan.
I'm not too well versed on this topic, though I am aware of one barrier is permit waiting times, which could be instead delegated entirely to staff if we could ensure that applications are aligned with our long-term vision for the community. It's also a conversation to be had in the case that I win this election to be had regarding the fine details and reduced tax incentives. On industry, still doing my homework about it, though I do know we have some land set aside for industry, however, it lacks infrastructure. I also do know how much of a boon it could be by way of well-paying jobs and taxes. And on Brea Lewis's point, yeah, housing issue is sort of a business issue. Having people work where they live and live where they work is better for the town overall. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's move on and talk about city infrastructure. The city has a lengthy list of both public works projects and facility maintenance and repairs, and the delayed maintenance has shown up in burst water pipes and office spaces that are outdated and cramped. What process would you use to prioritize funding for projects? And do you have an opinion as to what is most critical to put at the top of the list for action? So you have 1.5 minutes, and we'll start with Dylan.
Again, still paging through packets and pamphlets and plans, though we should prioritize maintaining our current infrastructure before funding upgrades and expansions to city facilities, in my humble opinion. I'm aware of the library, evidence room, and current Parks and Recs building being susceptible to flooding, along with another fire station being needed. I think these all take precedence over the Civic Campus project, which I am in support of, though I don't think it's an emergency. Oh, is the civic campus thing going to be asked in a later question or? Oh,
Yeah,
never
this
mind.
one is
Well,
really about what processes you would use to prioritize all of the long list of various infrastructure.
oh, I don't think I have the right to ask that question. I think that's something that I have to get about through conversation. That's all I have to say on the issue.
Okay, thank you. Bria, your turn. You have a minute and a half.
Thank you. So we do have a strategic plan to be able to actually have those in order. We do understand that, we are currently tackling our fire stations and a lot of our emergency facilities. I do believe that our the civic campus is important because our city hall does need that upgrade for it to be not only a better environment for our staff, but also a safer environment for our staff. The current City Hall building will not be able to withstand any emergencies or natural disasters if it stays that way. The same goes for our police station. I took a tour of it about a year ago, and it was not the greatest. The evidence room is subject to flooding, and so there's a lot of cases that can be thrown out because the evidence is corrupted. So the library is going to be shut down very soon to be able to get upgrades for that as well. We also had a very long, I think about a year and a half ago, we had a very long series about public works projects and how that and the timeline for that. So we definitely have the priorities straight, but it does take a long time to be able to get to every single facility. We just recently figured out a financial plan to get our Parks and Rec building to be able to not only upgraded but also moved so that way it can be more safer again for staff and the equipment and to create longer sustainability for that.
Great, thank you. Okay, next question. The city has been exploring a new civic campus that would replace the current city hall, council meeting chambers, municipal court, and possibly the police station. What's your view of the necessity for the new facilities and how would you approach getting them paid for? So this will be 1 minute. We'll start with Brie.
So as I said before, the campus project is definitely a way to you have a safer and better space for our staff. However, it is still in the very, very early stages. Like we just finished a outreach and a community task force have given them their last presentation, and that is the farthest we have gotten on that. So we're still in the very, very baby stages of that. So right now that's not taking that much priority. However, the being able to fund, like I said, we just found a way to fund our Parks and Rec Center, and then I'm not completely sure, but I know we are definitely looking into and discussing different financial resources and funding for the police department because again, that is definitely not a safe building either for any of our staff. And if we can't have our emergency services, not only will Corvallis be in trouble, but so will actually the rest of the county since we are the 911 for like the entire county and not just our Corvallis itself.
Great, thank you. Dylan, your question.
Yeah, having our city staff and the services they provide centrally located and accessible by bike, bus, and by walking while being an active part of downtown is important to me, though don't think it's a priority when considering the other issues in our city. Though even within the civic campus project, I think decoupling some parts so we could sort of put an order to how they're tended to, which ones are considered more urgent. I don't have an answer to that. I think I have to go to more meetings about it. It also doesn't help that Councilor Lewis and I share a lot of the same sort of ideas and values, and so we'll often be repeating each other. That's all I have to say.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, next question. Water bill fees. This is a topic of conversation with residents who've seen the service fees continue to increase on their water bills. How would you balance the need for the city to generate revenue with the impact that these increasing fees are putting on to homeowners and renters. So Dylan, we'll start with you and you have a minute 30.
I was actually surprised to learn about the way people are billed. I don't think it's equitable. People should be charged according more or less to their usage. I won't get too deep into it, but I think our city's biggest partners, like OSU, that make use of our infrastructure but don't pay their fair share of taxes or fees, should, as to how we would go about negotiating stuff like that. Learning, still learning.
Okay, great. Brie, your question.
I personally, I don't like seeing the increase in my water bill either. I understand how frustrating and, especially when you have surprise bills and then you have an increase, it's not fun. I know for the past 2 years, I have not enjoyed doing it because like as part of the community myself, seeing my bills go up as well is not ideal. We are actually so that in that sense, the urban renewal and the TIF program would actually definitely be TIF district, excuse me, would definitely be something that we'll like seriously look into to be able to mitigate that balance.
Great, thank you both. So that wraps up our core questions. We're now going to move over to the lightning round with Steve Schultz.
Thank you, Helen. So as we'd said, these are going to come a lot faster, and the answers just need to be a lot quicker. They are very much at random. So here we go. We have a question here that with all the new building being discussed for downtown and other areas of the city, and as older homes are replaced with those new buildings, how do we avoid that becoming a situation that gentrifies the community, makes it too expensive and excludes some folks? I'm going to start with you, Brie.
I was like, can you
That's
repeat part of
pretty
the
simple.
question? I couldn't hear you.
So can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So gentrification, all this new building going on, in terms of residential, older homes being replaced by newer builds. How do we avoid that becoming gentrification?
So I am the city liaison to the Historic Resources Commission. So I believe that if we look into how we can, instead of tear down and rebuild older buildings into newer homes, we can see how we can accommodate the older buildings into being more sustainable and actually increase their lifespan and ownership. That's one way I can see, mitigating the gentrification, being a developers using our resources that we do have to be able to build low income housing. I can see that as another way to prevent that gentrification.
And then Dylan, I'll move over to you. Response.
Well, I haven't said everything I was gonna say, but yeah, and it was also another conversation talking about whether or not the old city hall should be demolished. Is no, we should just keep it and expand upon it. And I think the same should hold true to some of these buildings that have become icons downtown. Give them historical status, maybe a bit of, what do they call it? Retrofitting or something.
Okay, moving along. We've also got a question here with all the infrastructure needs, all the facility needs, the needs of trying to take care of our neediest citizens. Is it appropriate the city is maintaining or owning facilities like the Majestic or or Osborne? I'll start with you on this one, Dylan.
My apologies. Could you repeat the question?
Osborne and a Majestic, with all the other financial needs of the city, is it appropriate we continue to own those facilities and maintain them?
Oh, yes, yes, of course. I haven't heard anyone saying that the city shouldn't. I do wonder why. I'll look into that.
Okay, Bria.
I think it's important for the city to own and maintain those facilities because it is a way to be able to keep the community involved with what's going on, and also have a place for the communities to go to. One of my coworkers actually asked me about the Osborne Aquatic Center because she used it, and unfortunately, because the aquatic center is down, I don't see anyone else being able to provide the maintenance that we can for the Majestic nor the Osborne. So right now, I think for having the city be the ones to own it and maintain it is something that we should continue to do.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and I'll start on this one with you, Bria. City attorney contract used to be on retainer. It's now quite a bit more expensive and with far less presence. In other words, at city council meetings and so forth of a city attorney because we retained a firm that bills hourly. When this comes back up in a couple, 3 years, would you be open to looking at the city hiring its own counsel, much like other communities across Oregon might do, or that you see the county doing? They have their own county council. Bria, about 30 seconds.
Um, Definitely looking into it. We had a similar process for the attorneys that we do now. But once that contract comes back around, we'll definitely be able to see what the surrounding area does and see if it will work for Corvallis, because that's the one thing that we need to really look at. Like, just because another community does it doesn't mean it will always work for Corvallis and vice versa. So seeing if it will work for us or not is definitely one of the things that we'll definitely keep in mind before we even look
So
anywhere else.
open-minded on the subject. Okay, I'm gonna move over to you, Dylan.
I,
City
s-
attorney contract.
I do see advantages to having a hired attorney. It's more consistent and we could budget, guess, more or less the same. It's predictable. Though I don't feel too strongly either way. Um, more
Good.
to learn on
Okay.
that.
Dylan, I'll start with you on this next one. The Charlotte Ellis matter. Do you think that's been a good use of city resources, both in time and in money?
Waste of time and money. Won't say it's impersonal, although the general sentiment among people in town that it was. Interpreting her encouraging a position be filled as a violation of the city charter was a very big stretch.
Okay, I'll move over to you, Bria.
Whatever happens, happens. Whenever it ends, it ends. I
But
can't
has
really
it
speak.
been a good use of time, time and money so far?
Personally, no.
Okay,
But yeah.
that's pretty direct. Okay, what can the city of Corvallis do to work with Benton County to ensure that Republic Services is um, being a responsible and ethical partner and steward? I'm going to give each of you a full minute on that, and I will go ahead and I'll start with Bria on that one.
So thankfully that decided not to renew their permit in sending us their leachate, unless it's like dire emergencies. However, I think we can be a little bit more, not aggressive, but a little bit more staunch on our stand on where we are when it comes to basically anything that they do, really. Being able to be a still have a good working relationship, as well as keeping our community like in process. Sorry, I had a long day. As well as keeping our community in the loop and being able to have their input is definitely a balancing act. I'm not saying it's easy. When I first started, that was the franchise agreement was the very first meeting of my term, and that was tough. So
Great. Okay, and then for you said that there was either a contract or a permit that wasn't renewed. What were you talking about there for viewers at home?
So Republic Services has decided not to renew their permit in order to send their leachate to our water filtration.
Okay, so that's no longer an issue. Okay, gonna move over to you, Dylan. 1 minute.
That the city and county were ever okay with a company emboldened by a lack of environmental regulation, knowingly poisoning our lands, air, and water is beyond me. No amount of money could ever justify it. It's good news that the city will no longer be accepting the leachate by the end of 2025. I was also there at last night's meeting, though it's not something I'd celebrate. Never should have been in the first place. Through some of the conversations I've had with some of the folks from the Valley Neighbors for Environmental Quality and Safety, I learned that our facilities are not even to process the filth and poison coming from Coffin Butte, instead more towards like, natural sediment and stuff. We really need to take a look at our relationship.
Okay, let's go ahead and move over to noise ordinances. About a month back, a community member got up during public comment at a council meeting and talked about an AC compressor that a gentleman or somebody at the building next door placed for their building about a foot outside of her window. This thing's chugging along all day long, making whatever decibels it's making. And question is, we currently don't apparently have code on books for this. Are you supportive of getting code on the books for this? And I imagine the enforcement would require that in the permitting process, there be a permitting process to okay some units and frankly not others, and probably some decibel thresholds. I will go ahead and I'll start with you on this, Dylan. 30 seconds.
As Corvallis grows denser and more populated, this will be an issue we should be proactive about. I say we simply look to larger cities and their policies regarding noise and try to adapt them to our own.
Good. Bria?
I am not opposed to looking into that. It just depends on, again, that sounds more of that it may work for other places. It might not work for us, because we are a college town and there will be a lot of exceptions because of OSU. There might not be exceptions because of OSU, so it really just depends.
All right, you're open to it, but it might say you were less committed to this as a general idea than Dylan.
Yes.
Okay. And Dylan, would it be fair to say you are more committed to this idea than is Bria?
I grew up next to these things. It drives you insane.
Okay. Gonna go ahead and move along. Okay. Do you believe these levies and fees that Helen had brought up earlier are regressive in nature? In other words, they impact people with lower incomes more than folks that are impacted at the upper incomes. I'll start with you on that, Dylan.
Is this regarding the water bills?
Yep, water bills with all the service fees.
Oh, yeah. I mean, people shouldn't be charged the same. I grew up in Southern California and we always had that drought, and time and time again, it was always the wealthiest people using up the most of the water. And, it was all right then and there because they paid for their own water bill. But what we've got here is kind of like subsidizing other people's excessive watery lifestyle.
Bria,
I
tax regressivity.
yeah, it's a yes and no for me. Yes, I do think that it does do that, but it also depends on where they live. I live in an apartment complex and my water is technically free, or included in my rent, so that doesn't affect me as much, or at least I don't think it affects me as much as it would if I was, say, a homeowner. So it's a yes and a no. It just depends on where you live and how that water is processed in your fees and in your bills.
Okay, moving along. We had a situation occur. It's a good example, and I will go ahead and I'll start with Bria on this one. Months back, Optum took over Corvallis Clinic. The paper's been clear about this. We believe that the community as a whole will have its well-being and livability impacted by that. Obviously, as a city council, you don't have a vote on that. You have no authority to do anything about it at all. On the other hand, it's going to deeply impact the lives of your constituents. What would you do confronted with a situation where that is the case? Something you folks can't really have any authority over, but you definitely want to help mitigate the impact or avoid the impact on your constituents. So using Optum as an example, what might you have done to see if you could get into that situation and find a different outcome? And again, I'm going to go ahead and start with, I guess, who did I say was starting with? I don't even remember. Dylan, I'll just start with you. 60 seconds.
Well, I believe healthcare is a human right. I'd like to use the council seat to advocate and lobby for universal healthcare. I'm still getting more familiar with our local Mid-Valley healthcare advocates on what I could do specifically to further the cause. That's my take on it.
Gonna move to you, Bria.
Honestly, I'll just find the people who do have the power and like really talk to them and work with them to see what I can do with my position and be able to get that information and the resources that the community needs to be able to make their voices heard, whether it's a good impact or a bad impact, just making sure that their voices are heard either way.
Okay, good. Okay, and then I think we'll go ahead and we'll move over to closings. Actually, I did hear something in your answer to one of the direct questions. The idea of NIMBYs or folks that are not in my backyard comes up frequently. They came up in the matter of managed camps. What are some things that what are some of your sense of, do sometimes the folks that have their neighborhoods impacted have a valid point, and what can you do in that instance? And specifically, if there were to be a managed camp, what could you do to mitigate those impacts? I mean, suggestions have been to move them every year to a different ward. There's been suggestions that they be moved more frequently or less frequently. I guess viewers at home may want just a general sense of what you would do in that kind of an instance. I'll start with you, Dylan. About 30 seconds.
It's a bit personal. I used to live at the end of, what was it, 5th Street, down by the intersection with C, right next to Shawala Point. And I myself have had some negative experiences living in places where there's a lot of people experiencing homelessness. And when I was canvassing in the north part of Southtown, I was talking to some homeowners that were advocates for the sweeps because of the impact on the river as well as the noise affecting their sleep. And these are valid concerns, though I don't believe that the well-being of the homeless people and neighborhoods are mutually
So what would you
exclusive.
do to help the folks that are in those neighborhoods?
Let's see. Ensuring that the managed encampment is away, has some distance, and maybe even some physical barriers, as well as having staff on standby in the case of someone experiencing
Okay,
crisis.
and then on the subject of moving the camp around, do you think it could be moved yearly, monthly, less, more?
Hmm. I think seasonally, um,
Okay, got
something
it.
to do. Yeah.
Okay, same question, Bria.
So as someone who actually had experienced houselessness before, I have actually been on the other side, and it's not fun when you're trying to find a place to sleep, and someone goes, "Well, you can't stay here." So but there are very valid reasons for that. I just got a few emails not too long ago about the the feces left in Central Park right next to the playground. And so, it's like there's things like there's worries like that. And it's just like that's a health hazard. So being able to ease the worries of the communities first and foremost, be able to have staff, be able to budget for the staff, and work with our local partners and our local nonprofits to be able to have as many volunteers or as many staff as possible to be able to work with the county as well to be able to actually have a managed camp. And how that looks like, we would have to actually hear the voices of the people who are actually on the ground working with them to be able to even come up with a draft of a plan before we do anything else.
Okay, but any specific mitigations you can think of for neighborhoods offhand now?
Unfortunately, no, not right now.
Okay, moving along to closing statements. And I'm going to give you about 45 seconds each. We're going to be starting out with Bria. And for closing, I think that viewers would like to know what does differentiate the two of you. I think I'll leave it open like that. What would differentiate you from your opponent? Bria, 45 seconds.
Oh, it's okay. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I am currently the Ward 2 incumbent, and I would love to be here for another 2 years. I think 2 years is a lot, not a lot of time, but that's a different story. What probably separates me the most from Dylan, I am the first openly gay Black woman that has ever been on the Corvallis City Council. I want to continue that legacy onward into 2025 and 2026.
And Dylan, 45 seconds.
Well, kind of difficult question for me. I don't like to focus on what separates me from other people. Councilor Lewis and I have a lot in common. We're both queer people of color, relative newcomers to Oregon and Corvallis, and want to make the place better. Though I will say, Councilor Lewis's personality and mine own are quite different. By her own words, she's shy and she's bubbly, and I appreciate her upbeat attitude at city council meetings, but I'm kind of in your face and can be really harsh and critical. But through dozens of conversations I've had while canvassing, there is a desire to have someone more willing to rock the boat, someone who will show up at the door of the local festival, music show, or neighborhood meeting, who's available and willing to meet with their constituents face to face outside of civic settings, which can often stifle conversation. Well, either way, I'd say award wins.
Dylan DeHonor. Oh, were you not finished?
Oh, no. But also, thank you, Stephen and Helen, for putting this together.
Dylan DeHonor and Bria Lewis running for Ward 2. Thank you for your participation in this debate. I also want to thank Helen for co-moderating, and of course, the staff, volunteers, subscribers, donors, sponsors that make these debates possible. The advocate plans to issue their endorsements this Friday, October 25. City Club makes no endorsements concerning candidates or issues and focuses only on presenting a constructive community dialogue, which we hope this has been. And to you, the viewer, we appreciate your interest in the upcoming election, and we remind you that ballots need to be either dropped or postmarked by November 5.